before, after it's printed and before it goes into the board packet.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
If you do have any questions on this now, I can answer them as to what came out of what fund.
No, I think, I mean, it just takes a little bit of tracking back to that original cover page, I guess. It's not that it's impossible to do. That those labels will make it easier, though, and I'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any questions from the board?
No, that will be helpful when they're labeled, just to more quickly be able to read through.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. If there's no further questions, then whenever you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that's 7 yes for C2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to E1A. That's the tenure appointment of Mark Blankenberg. If I could get a motion and a second from the board. Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
I'll give you a motion.
Second by Goodwin. Thank you, Brad. You're third.
Okay.
Would you like to say anything, Mr. Corey, or any questions from the board?
Mr. Blankenberg has been working with us for about 4 years now. He has a lot of different responsibilities and roles in the district, obviously. He's taken on the 21st Century Grant and certainly does a good job for us with our athletics. So, I've had the pleasure of working with him for about a year now, or working with him for about a year now. I just gave you a promotion, Mark. So he's certainly very attentive and a good part of our administrative team. So, it's just my recommendation that we recommend him at this point.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Corey.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Klein, when you're ready.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Mr. Curtis.
Mr. Curtis? Okay. And any abstentions? So that's 6 yes.
Correct. Thank you. Move on to E1B. That's the tenure appointment of Mr. Smiley. If I could get a motion and a second from the
I'll
board.
give you a
Mr. Nodine, and a second.
A second.
All right, Mr. Utes, thank you. Any comments from you, Brian, or questions from the board?
No, Mr. Smiley has been working with us for quite some time as well, and he actually did an administrative task for us over the summer. He worked as our summer school principal, did a good job, has also done kind of a intern, well, it is an internship with Mr. Van Orman, as well as the other administrators, but his main contact was Mr. Van Orman. So he's business teacher here in our district, certainly does a lot of other things like yearbook and those types of things. So Mr. Van Orman, anything you want to add for Mr. Smiley?
Yeah, that's a good summary, right? Mr. Smiley, really approachable, hardworking, good demeanor with the students, and has really stepped in with some of the difficult challenges with a business position, with yearbook and some of the fundraising opportunities and things to put together a good yearbook. So I thought he's done a nice job.
I would think, this is Brad, I would think that in this particular year, this is the time to try to put together so much of the yearbook. I'm sure this is a challenge no one saw, right?
Yeah, I know that he's still in communication with the students. A lot of the students are the liaisons to put that yearbook together, and he's still working on staying in touch with them so they could submit the different components that they need to submit. So
Good.
Thank you. All right, any further questions from the board? Okay, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That would be 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Item E1C, we have another tenure appointment of Julie Yunker, elementary teacher. If I could get a motion and a second, please.
I'll do a motion, Kyle.
Mr. Nodine, and a second. Mr. Curtis, thank you. Any questions from the board or comments from the administrators?
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, Julie is a phenomenal addition. She teaches first grade with us right now. One of my last year, a couple of months into the school year, I was walking a young man who does not always love to come to school, and taking him down to Julie's room, and we walk in, and Julie turns and sees him. She's like, "Oh my goodness, we are so happy to see you right now." And she came running over to give him a hug. And that's really Julie's personality. She does a great job for our kids. She plans well. She's doing letters training. She's just a fantastic addition to Kyler.
Terrific, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions from the board? If not, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein, we'll take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That would be 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, another tenure appointment, E1D. This is for Amanda Wilkinson. If I could get a motion and a second. Mr. Dates and Mr. Curtis, thank you, guys. All right. Any comments from the administration? Questions from the board? Now's the time.
I think that right now is a very challenging time where our counselors are asked to do things a little differently and a little more outside the box. And in just talking with Dennis, and I'll let him talk about Amanda in a minute, but just talking to Dennis, our counselors in general have really stepped up and done a nice job in trying to reach out to the family systems and the students. So a special thanks to them for that. And specifically, I know Amanda had a big involvement in that in the elementary school. So I'll let Dennis talk a little bit more about her.
Yeah, Amanda's great. We had the opportunity to bring a second counselor in this year, and Amanda has been a perfect guidance for that counselor. Just in fact, this morning, as I wake up, I get text messages from Amanda saying, "Hey, we haven't been able to get eyes on this certain student in a couple of weeks, and we're a little concerned what might be going on." And so then she laid out the next few text messages of exactly what she's doing. And we, before lunch, we had contacted the family and talked to that student. So, she's just a great addition as well.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no questions from the board, we'll take a vote.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That would be 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Item E1E, tenure appointment of Emily Wilson, special education. If I could get a motion and a second.
I'll do a motion, Kyle.
Mr. Nodine, Mr. Smith, thank you, guys. All right, Mr. Corey?
Yep. So I see Julia there. Oops, let me unmute her here. Julia, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, you are now on.
Okay, so Emily came here. She was actually at North Rose Wilkett, and she came this way 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, and she taught third grade special ed as kind of a co-teaching thing, and now she's been at fourth grade for 2 years. She is very thorough. She writes fantastic IEPs. She's one of those teachers that crosses her T's and dots her I's, and she's a welcome addition to that fourth grade staff. She collaborates very well with them. And during this COVID, whatever we want, a pandemic, she's been in contact with all her students and done some meetings and stuff with Heather Hardgrave, and they're a good team. They work very well together.
Excellent, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the board? All right, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, E1F, tenure appointment of Heather Bianco Whitcomb. Also special education. If I can get a motion and a second for that, please.
Make a motion.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Curtis and Mr. Utes, please. Thank you. All right, Mr. Corey, any comments or questions from the board?
Yep, I'll turn it over to Julie again.
Heather has got she's a great teacher. One of the nice things about what she has is that birth to 2 certification for special ed, which is difficult to find in people. She's worked with us for 4 years, the last 3 with Missy Uberu, and they make a dynamic team together. They do a great job together. I hear in the public a lot of kudos about the program that they have. They, of course, at the preschool level, they have to work with OT, PT, and speech daily. And they're great communicators, great collaborators, and they put a lot of parents' minds to ease at the CPSE meetings. So I'm very thankful that we have her at UPK.
Terrific, thank you. Any questions from the board, or are we ready to vote? All right, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's 7 yes. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item E1G, tenure appointment of Elizabeth Malkoff Vendel. If I could get a motion and a second from the board, please.
I'll give you a motion, Kyle.
Motion.
Mr. Smith
Second.
and Mr. Dates. Thank you, guys. All right, Mr. Corey.
Yep, also in Julia's territory. So we'll pass her on to Julia. Now,
I'm happy to talk about Liz. It's nice to tenure somebody in the speech department. That's hard to find good speech therapists. Those pathologists are not easy to come by, and Liz has done a tremendous job. She's really stepped up to the plate. I don't know if you all remember, but we lost a .8 in January, and Liz really led the other 2 speech people who are therapists who are very new, and led the changing of the schedule and meeting with parents and making sure that everything went smoothly in January with that transition. She's done a really nice job. She also works very well with the middle school teachers. Her caseload is mostly middle school, and she's done a great job transitioning there too.
Good. Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right, let's vote. Mrs. Klein, please.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That'll be 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item E1H, we are in receipt of a letter of resignation from Patrick Chiricella, high school principal. If I could get a motion and a second on that, please.
I'll give a motion.
Mr. Curtis, and a second by Mr. Smith. Thank you. Any questions from the board or comments? Okay, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that would be 7 yes. Thank you.
Okay, item E3, we have the CSE and CPSE, 1 CPSE recommendation. If I can get a motion and a second from the board.
I'll motion.
Make a motion.
All right. I was looking away there. Did you get that, Mrs. Klein?
Brian and Daryl.
Okay, there we
Thank
go.
you.
Any questions on this or comments from you, Mr. Corey?
nope.
Any questions from the board?
One thing I want to say, again, I appreciate getting the parents in there to vote on, or to be with the kids and stuff. I see we have a lot of that, so that's nice.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Larry. And right now, with this time of year is normally very busy in special ed world because there's a lot of annual reviews going on and preparing for the next year. This has obviously put a different dynamic in how we're doing that. So Julia right now is starting to begin the process to really move forward, pending something, the length of this thing goes longer than what we had anticipated. So she's really working through that process, and it creates a whole different dynamic working with the parents and the regulations and the procedures that she needs to follow. So that's been a lot of conversations with our legal teams and, in just trying to understand the guidance that's coming through the state education department right now. So it's a lot of planning goes into this at this point in time, specifically in general, but specifically because of this issue that's going on now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That would be 7 yes. Thank you.
Okay, item E4, we have the vote on the administrative budget and the election of BOCES board members. Can I get a motion and a second?
Yeah.
Mr. Nodine and Mr. Dates. This looks, at least the Board of Education, we have 3 candidates for 3 positions. So that's a pretty easy vote. And then there's the administrative budget part of this component of this. So, Mr. Corey, anything to say or? Oh,
I just had to let Paul go to bed, so. Sorry. The difference between working from home and not, I guess. No, so I think the bios are pretty straightforward. And, this is a typical time of year where we do this. I personally, I don't know any of these people. So I'm looking at their bios and that's pretty much all I have for that.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Corey.
I know it's not a lot of information.
Any questions from the board? I don't know that we'll have any answers, but
Yes, I have one from Brad here. I noticed in reading some data the other day from the state, the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES got about $350,000 off some of that stimulus package that went to colleges and educational facilities. Had you heard that as well, Brian?
Yeah, it's still being discussed on how that actually impacts us in general. So I don't have the very specifics on it, but I was in a meeting today that I'll talk about in a minute with some of our local politicians, and they're talking about those funding streams and how the money needs to be funneled through towards education, and they're on top of that. So I'm not surprised to see some of those things coming through, but I don't really have the exact impact to our particular district at this point.
Right. I'm not surprised, but it's in my mind, it's good to see they got money versus zero.
Absolutely.
It's got to go to. It's an educational setting, so it's got to be used somewhere there.
Correct. Yep.
Look into that for us, Mr. Corey, but I believe, Mr. Dates, that I had read that the money that was allocated to our BOCES was actually to be used in the adult education program, continuing education, because it was, like you said, lumped in with all the funding that was sent to colleges and things. I believe that was how that was to be distributed. But please, Mr. Corey, see what you can find out and whether or not it will impact our district. That'd be nice to know.
And thank you, Cal. If I missed that, then this is just all part of the investigation then.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, to your point, Brad, right now there's all kinds of stimulus pieces that are just not certain on how they're going to impact in general. So the conversations are still out there. Even our local politicians in the conversation today strongly stated that they need to be on top of how that money gets disseminated.
Right. Thank you.
Talk more about that later too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll take a vote on this this BOCES vote. Now, actually, hang on. Before we do vote, Brian, this is something we all need to physically sign, don't we? If I recall from years past.
Well, we cast a ballot. We have to go through and cast a ballot.
Okay, we don't. This isn't something we physically have to sign.
You have to do it through roll call.
Got it. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's 7-0. Thank you. 7 yes.
Thank you.
A full call, Kyle, qualifies for roll call. It's not a definitive separate roll call, correct?
Sure. Right. No, I don't think so. Not at this.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, item E5. This is the BOCES Cooperative Bidding Group approval. If I could get a motion.
Yeah.
Second, Mr. Dates, and a second from
Mr. Noda, fine.
Curtis. Thank you. First one I saw, at least, but thank you all. All right, Mr. Corey, do you want to speak to this at all? This is pretty standard, right?
Yeah, this is our standard bidding process. I mean, we've done this for multiple years, and it seems to work pretty well for us. Bill and I were, I think you're still there, Bill, right? Bill and I were talking about it this morning, and we don't have any concerns about moving forward with this. So it's a pretty good process for us.
Okay, any questions from the board? All right.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Bill?
No, we utilize this quite a bit. A lot of our cleaning supplies, light bulbs. There's various other things. The paper towels. A lot of the things that we would use. Paper. The copy paper. We go through the cooperative bid, and it's BOCES wide for those that participate in it, and it's a minimal cost for what we actually save. We save quite a bit more than we actually spend on the coaster.
Terrific, good. This is it's the bulk purchasing power really of BOCES, right? As well
Correct.
as the BOCES aid that we get on that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Good, thank you. Any questions from the rest of the board, or are we ready to vote? Okay, Mrs. Klein. When you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
She's still there?
I will tell you that I have my computer set up to the VPN and it just shut down. Is that something that maybe happened district wide, and that's how she's communicating also?
I see your name still on there,
Sure, yeah.
and it's an open mic.
This is very odd.
Amy, can you hear us?
All right. Well, let me see. I grabbed the notebook. We can get this.
I have it too, Kyle, just so you know.
You got it? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we can still vote without Amy.
Yep.
Be back as soon as you can, I'm sure. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? So that's seven yes.
She just sent me a message saying that her computer just shut down.
Okay.
That's what mine did. My
Yeah.
laptop.
So she'll reboot, and as soon as I see her in here, I'll get her back in.
Perfect. Okay. For the board, we'll move on to item E6. That's approval of the agreement with Delphi Rise for 2021 school year. Can I get a motion and a second? All right.
I'll do one, Kyle.
And Mr. Curtis. All right. Thank you. You want to speak to this, Mr. Corey, please?
Sure. So Delphi Rise has been with us for a couple years now. You remember last year it was Steve Parshals who was doing that program for us. So it's substance and drug and alcohol abuse and some of the impact on that with family members. So it's a counseling support service for students who are impacted by those types of challenges. So it's been a pretty good relationship with us, and we've really benefited from it. We were actually pulling the resources out of a grant previously, and the grant funding changed a little bit, and at the same time, BOCES picked this up as a co-servable item. So we were able to shift it over to a contract through BOCES. So what you're seeing here is actually the agreement between BOCES and Delphi, with our signature that we're going to participate in that service. So that's why it looks a little different than it has looked in the last year. You'll see in here that you see Michelle Sullivan's name on there because she is the BOCES employee who's running or facilitating the program. There is a financial increase, but just so you know, it is aidable, so we get a pretty significant amount of aid back on that. And the increase is about just over $1,000 for the program. Certainly well utilized in our district, as I think our principals could probably attest to. I know Dennis has students involved in the program. Matt and Raina have students involved in their program. So we definitely see a pretty significant impact on having that program in our district. I'm excited that it made the shift over to the BOCES because it does allow us to get aid back on it, and we can reallocate those funds through the grant for another type of program that supports students.
Good news. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Mike, I have a question, Kyle. Only in that, who can help me? Maybe the principals or Brian yourself. Who does the supervision and or assessment of that person in that role?
So Matt actually has a direct contact through Delphi Rise, I believe. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Matt?
Yeah, so their program coordinator is I don't know. I mean, can I use do I use a name? Do I not? I have contact with the program coordinator through Delphi Rise, and I mean, so that's kind of a an off-site system, and the drug and alcohol counselor that we receive actually gets an on-site evaluation. Like they bring their staff out to do, their supervisor comes out and does some work a couple times a year. Don't quote me on the number. I've seen them at various times, 2 to 3 times a year. They come out. They have to inspect the space because the space needed to be approved by Delphi and the state. So the room that was designated, and then they whatever course load management. And some of those things. So it's not the Red Creek administrator. It's somebody through Delphi Rise.
But as a Red Creek, there's still some level of input in terms of the function and the quality of function, and some level at least of oversight that can be shared with the supervisors from the program. Correct? Because I mean, I would not like to have a program where it's only supervised from outside with our own students, and there's no real input for our own staff to review.
Yes, yes, you're right. So in my conversations, like last year and 2 years ago, they would ask for input. So I don't know if it was necessarily called an evaluation. It was probably part of their evaluation, but they wanted to know some of the responsibilities, maybe some of the committee work that they had done, just general perceptions about demeanor and ability to work with staff, and keep kids involved in some of their counseling programs. They do both preventative. They do preventative programs with our students, and then they do reactionary counseling as well. So,
right.
But I will add, they also work collaboratively with our administrative team as well as our counseling team. So there's a pretty seamless, back and forth between, if a kid is struggling that, maybe sees one of the counselors, they could actually transition them fairly easy in there. So there is a nice collaboration there that helps out with some of that, that question that you have.
No, they're good. That's you've answered my question, and if it helps anybody else on the board too to know that tie-in that is there, because you see them daily, and somebody coming 3 times a year is different.
Yep.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Dates.
Thank you.
Any further questions by the board?
Amy is back, by the way.
Oh,
I
great.
believe.
Then, Mrs. Klein, we're on item E6, and we're ready to vote when you are.
Maybe she's not.
Or not.
she's muted.
No, she's not. Does it say mute on your end? Because mine does not.
There's 2 Amy Kleins.
Oh, yes.
Well, let's see. Where is the? Where's the real Amy Klein? There she is.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Maybe 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein.
Welcome back, Mrs. Klein.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item E7. This is the second reading of a policy, policy 5676, that I believe was 2 prior meetings ago, right, Mr. Corey?
Oh, at least, I believe, yeah. March.
Second reading, and I think we filled in Cindy Hayes' name as the coordinator of this, correct?
Correct. Yes.
That's only change to it from 2 meetings ago. Did anyone have any? I actually need a motion and a second to discuss this, please.
I'll give you a motion.
Mr. Smith, and a second, Mr. Nodine. Thank you, guys. Did you want to speak to anything else on this, Mr. Corey? We all saw this a while ago, but.
No, you're right. So this is, you probably realize or have heard that this is a mandate that has come through. In the past, I think 1.5 to 2 years, they've been talking about it. And we're finally at the date where we have to actually have somebody in place for next school year. So different schools are doing it differently. The majority of the schools in our region right now, from what I understand, at least, are appointing somebody and then evaluating what that will look like. So, you know, I think what we need to do is move forward with this, appoint Cindy in this position. That gives us a chance or an opportunity to evaluate the parameters of what this is, because if you look at it, it's a pretty lengthy policy, and then really determine how to move forward with this in the future. So I don't think there's still very clear guidance on what this position actually is going to entail, you know, and we're doing the best to meet the regulations at this point with a little lack of information and knowledge on it. So our goal for the next few months is to really figure out what direction we're going to need to take with this position. But the policy is something that we have to approve. Cindy is willing to take this on and really be a part of that evaluation process. So we have her name in there as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Cindy. Any questions from the board? Are we ready to vote on this? All right, when you're ready, Mrs. Klein.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item E8, we have a resolution to adopt memorandum of agreement with the Red Creek Teachers Association. If I could get a motion and a second from the board, Mr. Curtis, and a second from Mr. Nodine. Thank you, guys. All right, and I'll let you describe this, Mr. Corey. I know when you described it to me, you said a lot of this was pretty much what was in practice currently under the current situation, that
Sure.
we just needed to kind of get in writing. So go ahead, I'll let you describe.
So basically, when this first started with our first school closure, you know, we sat down, I think it was myself, Mr. Keim, Mrs. Rice, and Mrs. Powell, and we had a conversation about how to move forward. And a great conversation. You know, basically what was said was, hey, listen, we're understanding that this is a pretty unprecedented time, and we're going to do what we need to do to properly educate and support our students in our community. So we were all collectively in agreement with that. We're still collectively in agreement with that. However, as we move through this and things start to become longer than anticipated, both parties felt that it would be nice to sit down and put some things down on paper just so that we understand where we are. It doesn't mean that this MOA can't be adjusted and changed. Actually, it says it in here. But these are the things that we have agreed upon on how to move forward and really support our community and our students. So if we can just real quickly go through, you know, the first several paragraphs there are just basically the legal piece of this is who the agreement is between, those types of things. So when you get into number 1, that really talks about performing instructional duties, that's not on the work site at this point. So education through distance learning modality, which could mean some different things. So anything to do with district approved platforms, using emails, Google Classroom, some of the programs that we've had, the virtual programs that we've had in the past, all of those things that we have done and also started to really support and move forward on, during this, it just captures that goal of continuing the education. The second piece is that the distance learning will not be mandated to be delivered through live instruction. So basically that means that we don't have to do instruction like we're doing right now, everybody live and looking face to face. Some people use Google Classroom, some people use Google Meets, some people use Zoom, some people use a lot of other platforms or blended platforms where they're chatting back and forth. Some teachers are using flipped classrooms. So really we wanted to provide the broadest aspect for all the people, mainly because being in a rural area like this, we have challenges with electronics and we have challenges with connectivity. So we didn't want to limit it to one means and say everybody needs to go online and do everything online, because it just wouldn't be effective for our district. And I don't think there's another district in New York State that can say we can do everything 100% online. So maybe there is, but I'm not aware of who that is. So it has been a challenge, but we've been kind of going through that and working through it as we come up with more challenges. So, I think you're all aware that we've been passing out packets for some of our students. We have been, pushing out electronic things, emails, and making phone calls and all those types of things to work with our students. Number 3 just addresses that guidance counselors, school psychologists, and nurses will maintain their regular contact with their students. I have to say, I believe that's happening in every building to great extent, actually. I think our counselors are spending a lot of time on the phone and a lot of time on emails. And I think, I've heard from, some of the psychologists and some of the social workers and not social workers, counselors, and our nurse very frequently myself. So I know they're following up with the school and the community and the students. Number 4, just basically says that, the use of district-wide emails and devices, video conferencing are encouraged with parents and students. It's the teacher contact and parent and student contact that they're trying to get at here in this MOA, which is pretty much what we're already doing. So that all seems pretty fair. Number 5, let's see, technological assistance. So we have obviously some connectivity issues, and we've had some device issues. I could tell you that Mr. Robbins is probably in our school parking lot at least 3 times a week, handing out new cords and cables and devices. And we had a student email him today that said her C key doesn't work. And he said, I will have a new device for you tomorrow. Can you meet me here? And he drives from his house and comes in and gets his device and meets with the students. On another note, we did have a gentleman, and I will share this with you guys probably at the next board meeting. A gentleman called us up and actually called one of the board members up and donated a brand new Chromebook for a student in need. We're working through that as well to push those devices out as we get them. Mr. Robbins has also secured through a grant prior to this whole thing, several hubs, several hotspots that he has pushed out, some to staff and some to students. It works pretty well for the most part. However, it also it becomes a problem depending on where people live. So if people have connectivity issues with their cell phone devices, they're going to have problems with those hotspots. So these are the types of issues that we're trying to get at here, that we're making every effort to kind of work through those and rectify those issues. So there's if you go down maybe the second sentence from the end of number 5, in the event no internet capability is possible, unit members will provide continuity of learning through traditional telephone and other non-internet based materials. I think that's very evident that we've done that. We've done that twice so far, and we have a plan to do it one more time and get everything out to people so that they can make sure that it's in their children's hands, and we can just communicate through the other devices. But the other piece is I asked Eric to come in and set up Wi-Fi capabilities in our parking lots. So if you go into the school parking lots, you can connect into the students will be able to connect automatically if they have their own devices, the school issued devices. And then there is a unsecure setting for anybody who wants to use the Wi-Fi in the parking lots to upload or download information. So that is available as well. Number 6, not required to perform any duties that would not be consistent with their normal assignment. So basically that's like me saying, hey, I need you to go drive a bus around the district and deliver things for a teacher. I got to tell you that it's funny when we write these things down, because I've probably had 6 teachers alone say to me, hey, I'd be willing to do that. So it's not that people aren't interested in doing those things, but it's just so that we're not so that we're in alliance with our agreement. We have fantastic people working on our food lines and fantastic people doing the sanitary piece behind that. And we're trying to eliminate as many people as possible coming into this building during this shutdown, because we really want to protect our students when they come back and our faculty and staff when they come back. So really, it is on a very, very scaled basis. On any given day, there is about 5 people in the district. There are 200 employees that are working from home, and they are working from home. There are faculty meetings happening. There are building level meetings happening. There are administrative meetings happening. There is the instruction going back and forth between teachers and students. I have a supervisor meeting on Friday. We're in contact with everyone. So there's a lot of work going on. It's just not physically on school grounds right now. So this number 6 just talks about people are going to be doing the things that they are traditionally hired to do. And if they should volunteer to do some other things, that's fine. But you know, we're not forcing them to go, you know, drive buses around the district when they are supposed to be teaching a class. And vice versa, bus drivers are not in doing other things as well. Number 7, so that kind of talks about the things that I just talked about. You know, the remote access for small group meetings and those types of things. You know, the notice that we would try to give teachers for having meetings. Sometimes that's practical and sometimes it's not. All of our people have been really responsive. I mean, I can't think of a time where I haven't said, I think last night at 11 o'clock, I said, Bill, was it 11, maybe 10:30? I said, Bill, I need to Zoom with you and Cindy and Raina actually. And all 3 of them were on in about 5 minutes. So people are doing what they need to do to do this. And that goes with the teachers unit as well. The number 8 just talks about, you know, unless things change with the law, this is how we're going to continue to move forward with distance learning instruction. Number 9, so unit members will not be required to provide education through a home learning on any day that he or she is sick, need personal time, illness, and a family bereavement. It talks about how you capture that. So it's the same as if you were sick on a normal day. If you are not feeling well and you're going to be sick that day, you would need to call in and make sure that you identify that. Number 10 talks about that people aren't entitled to extra compensation for doing things during this period of time. but it also protects the things that have already agreed to pay people for. So we should be in pretty good shape. And that's all stuff that we've discussed at the board level prior. 11, all terms and conditions of the collective bargaining. This memorandum of agreement shall apply for the specific time limited for addressing the COVID-19. So that's basically just saying that this MOA is for the time that we're in closure here during COVID-19. But remember, I think if we end up coming back this school year, and right now we're anticipated to come back, then things are still going to have to look different. So, you know, the social distancing regulations are still going to be in place, and we may have to conduct business a little bit differently than what we're used to. So that captures that same kind of tone. In number 12 just reiterates in that we need to revisit this based on what's going on in the world and how things are changing. And it's basically number 13 is saying that's not setting a precedence in practice. And 14, if there should be a hearing or a court matter, that evidence of the online piece here is not going to be used for that purpose. The MOA won't be modified, or without going through the collective bargaining group. Talks about legalities. And number 17, the MOA shall neither restrict nor preclude the district from determining or acting with respect to appropriate staffing levels in accordance with the law. So that just talks about basically should staffing things need to be adjusted. It really has nothing to do with this MOA. You would handle that in normal procedures. And then number 18 is just approval by the Board of Education. So the way that I handled this is I sat down through a Zoom meeting with Cheryl, Rob, and Kim, and also John Hickey, who is the NYSET rep. We walked through kind of what we thought it would look like. They went back and they reviewed it on their side. I went back and reviewed it with the people on our side, put it together. And this morning, I had electronic signatures from both Kim and Rob. So I signed as well. And as long as you approve as a board, then we'll move forward with this MOA. But by and large, I think it's really, it was a good process because it was collaborative. But it's really the things that we have all been doing to really support the needs of our students in our district. The principals are working really hard. Principals and directors are working really hard to help manage and facilitate some of those challenges that the teachers are having, whether it's technology or access to curriculum, those types of things. And professional development has been going pretty well right now with our teachers. So they're able to access some of those things as well. So, and I think Cindy will probably hit that in a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corey. It was very informative. Good. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, but I have a question, Brian.
Yep.
Would it be, and I don't know if you got any direction or guidance, for the other bargaining units, should there be something of this sort also with them?
There could be.
I mean, I don't know if you feeling there's a need based on what's being asked upon them, which is different than normal, what we've been used to for eons, and whether it would, I pose it as a question. Maybe it's something you want to investigate. What's happened with other districts, and would that be warranted?
Sure. From what I've heard, the MOAs have only really been at the teachers unit level at this point in the other school districts. The teacher aides and assistants have very different jobs. A one-on-one aide is not interacting the same as they normally would. However, I did receive an email, and I will forward it to the board. I think I already did actually, where that is a one-on-one aide who's working directly with a student, and they're checking in frequently and having conversations. They're just not physically there working with them. So they are still doing those types of things. They're not really being asked to do anything different than normal. above and beyond what their normal jobs are. A lot of them are volunteering to do that, and a lot of them are doing that. So, you know, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to doing something for that. But, you know, it's in my mind, it's not necessary at this point.
Well, yeah, I'm certainly not trying to find you more work to do in these times by any long stretch. But, you know, I was thinking about the other unions where, you know, the associations are equally as important for their roles, what they provide to make the whole world go around as a school district.
Yep.
That's all. And I would think that a student, as I'm reading through this, I've read through this, the challenge, and maybe Julia can answer to this, the challenge of a student that has a very challenging IEP to be able to fulfill that IEP in this new design of world that we have. You know, I mean, there's a lot of one-on-one aids, and you know, how that works, how well that works, because some of them are more one-on-one than others, you know, needing to be, and what they can provide. I know that. So.
Correct. Yes, it is a challenge. And students that are at BOCES that are in some pretty restrictive placements, it's tough being home, you know. BOCES is doing a nice job, but you're right. Absolutely. The students that are assigned a one-to-one aid just need that extra support. And sometimes it's more emotional support. Yeah, they might not have the home life that the other kids get. And I can't imagine. We've had discussions about checking in with those kids, but it's definitely a difficult situation for many families.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. I just, you know, not every home sends their best students, and some of their best students just need different things. So.
Right.
All right, thank you guys. Any further discussion from the board, questions or comments from you, Mr. Corey?
Nope, that's all I have.
Ready to vote on this board?
Sure.
Okay, Mrs. Klein, when you're ready.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That'd be 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein, and thank you, Mr. Corey, and to all your staff for all their hard work through all of this. It's amazing. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to you and your team for the administrative reports or anything you might have, you know, to say at the beginning here.
Yeah. So I just want to start off by, again, you know, thanking. I think this is the first board meeting we've had since we've been in our shutdown here. And thank you for the people who are in the audience for joining us tonight. We're trying to work out through some technology things here, and we've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we're pushing this out correctly and working through that. So it has not been all that easy, but we wanted to make sure that you had the ability to join us this evening. And I see a lot of or several teachers here as well. I just want to thank all of them for all of their hard work that they've been doing. I know you have all been working endlessly throughout the course of the day and nights and weekends at this point to try to make sure that we're providing the best possible education for our kids that we can. And I know it's been challenging, but I think that the overall feel or tone is we're doing what's right for our kids, and we just need to keep on moving forward and plugging. But I thank you for all of the extra time that you're putting in to really support that. You have the follow-up. Now there's a few extra in here because we had a couple. We had one meeting that was canceled last time, so you could take a look at those. And I'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions to the administrators who submitted them in a minute. But I just wanted to also mention that the Wayne Finger Lakes Superintendent Group has been meeting 3 times a week. We meet on 1 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at this point for at least an hour. Sometimes it's more than an hour. Sometimes it's a little less than an hour, but generally about an hour. And that's really to unpack what's going on with the state and federal government and state education department and all those organizations out there. We each receive guidance from different groups. So, you know, I mean, even sometimes Kyle and I will talk to each other during the day, and he'll say, hey, did you get this from NYSBA? And I'll say, no, but I got this from NISCUS. And sometimes the information is the same or similar, and sometimes it has a little different spin on it. But it's because these organizations are all trying to get their feet underground underneath this stuff and push it out. So I really do appreciate the superintendent group that I'm in, the Wayne Finger Lakes group, because it allows us for time to really say, hey, I don't really understand this. What do you know? And we can work through it together. That has also helped out with some of the communication pieces with our administrative team and our supervisors, food service, transportation, special education, because I take that information back and we do that in our administrative meetings. So we're doing our administrative meetings. Typically we do a every other week administrative meeting. I would say we've probably done at least 2 administrative meetings a week. And then there's also individual meetings off of that. So I can tell you that I met with Bill at least twice today, I believe. Matt and I have communicated multiple times today. You know, so it's happening at every level. It just is structured differently than it normally would be structured. So people are doing a lot of extra work, and it's really challenging sometimes to unpack what's going on with the state. I've literally sat in meetings where the governor comes on, and when we leave the meeting, the information is now different, and we have to go back in a meeting and talk about what just happened at the governor's level. You know, that's some of the challenges that we're dealing with. But those support groups are certainly helpful. Last week we met with Congressman Katko, and today I met with Senator Helming and Assemblyman, I can never say his name right, Brian, yeah. Menkolo, yes, and Tom Reed, Congressman Tom Reed. So really the biggest piece of it is advocating for the funding. They express their own concerns about funding, the funding stream coming from the federal government, coming to the governor's office, and then being dispersed out to the organizations such as schools and hospitals and things like that. So it was really good to get the school perspective together. There's a lot of things growing out of that meeting today that I think will be pretty positive for our district. But it's really that advocacy piece of, listen, our districts are going to be challenged if the governor takes back some funding or adjusts the funding, and it's going to have some pretty significant financial impacts on all of us in education. So it's really important that we stay on top of that. And I know, Kyle, you've received actually probably all the board members have received things from the onboard and NYSBA. Another thing I just want to mention is the budget vote and budget elections. So obviously that's postponed until sometime in, well, we don't have an exact date yet. So, so right now what NISCUS and our legal services have said, until you have a definitive date, you need to hold off. So that could be challenging as far as the windows go. And we can talk a little bit more about that as a board and procedural things. But we need to keep an eye on that on a daily basis, because when it pops up, we're going to need to do some things very quickly when we get those dates. Typically what happens in education is there's a process of information. So your superintendents usually get some information, then it trickles down to your building level administrators, and then it trickles out from there. That is definitely not happening right now. So what's happening is our politicians are hearing it at the same time as we're hearing it, and I'm hearing it at the same time as teachers are hearing it, and community members are hearing it. So it's really challenging to get a very clean, clear message out there, because by the time it's out there, it's already on Facebook, and it's a different version than what was actually said. You know, and I could tell you that twice Bill and I were texting back and forth yesterday about things that we were hearing, and at least two of the things that we heard were, I would say, loosely interpreted and twisted by the media. And, you know, I think you can probably all figure out some of those things. So we're really trying to bring those organizations together to get a very clear message. I know Wayne Finger Lakes in general is trying to get a clear message out there. Our district is really trying hard that when we put information out, that it's one clear message, whether it's elementary message, middle school and high school. They may have slight nuances that are different, but it's a direct, clear message that's going out to the entire community. And that's very purposeful and very deliberate. So we're really working to tighten up on those things. Personally, I do want to say that we have had a challenging time getting some of the resources, just like everywhere else in the world right now. If you watch the president, he'll tell you it's tough to get resources. If you watch the governor, he'll tell you the same thing. Right now, we were struggling about a week ago to obtain masks. Julia dropped off a bunch because her husband owns a pharmacy and was able to get his hands on some masks for us. So we have some masks in hand. We also had some come through the ordering process that we normally had today. So we're in pretty decent shape to protect our people when they are there. And I know right now it seems like, well, you know, there's not a lot of people in the building. That's true. But anytime anyone enters the building, I have to go disinfect that entire building, or at least anywhere that person has gone. So every time they do that, it requires a new mask. Food service, we have, I think she said 11 people that are working back and forth with Pam's group. They all have to have the proper equipment to keep themselves safe and keep the community safe as well. So thank you to the Herbst Pharmacy for helping us out there.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of that is Pam's group and Pat's group, Pat Davenport's group, have been working extremely hard to really keep the community going. Pam told me that on Thursday they served, I think it was 260 students. So, you know, that is fantastic. It's been fluctuating between 240 and 260 pretty much every Thursday and Tuesday. You know, we hand out multiple days of food for each of them. So that's an incredible amount of food that's coming through. Pam has done a fantastic job managing this. You know, I just can't say enough about how her and her crew has really stepped up and taken over and done this. I can't tell you that I've heard any complaints from any of them, you know, and I've been out there on days where, you know, I'm in my car driving past and waving to them because I don't want to get too close, you know, and, you know, I'm coming in to do something, and they're out there in the most miserable weather right now, passing out food to our people. And when you go past, can't see if they're smiling, but they are waving. So you got to give them a lot of credit. They've done a fantastic job. And Pat is right on it. I mean, I don't even have to say to Pat, hey, I had Pam and her people in. He's like, well, I know that Pam's group's in today. I have so-and-so and so-and-so on, and they're ready to clean up. And this is the other project I have them working on while they're there. So those things are working extremely well. We are still doing bus inspections as well. So really Sherry has kind of taken the reins on that and organizing that. We have had some of our grounds guys in doing things like plugging potholes and things like that are necessary, but on a real scaled back situation at this point because of the regulations and the social distancing. And my concern is, you know, we would probably all like to believe that we're essential employees, but we're not all essential employees when it comes to being in a public place. So we need to make sure that we limit that as much as possible. So we've been really keeping on top of that. Another thing that I just want to mention is that we had anticipated out of our project recoring the entire district key cores so that people can have a standard key for their classrooms. and it can just be a little more unified and organized. That was supposed to happen over the summer. Because of this closure, we actually had the gentleman come in and rekey our entire building. Rekeying a building is a huge task, and there's a lot of organization that has to take place for disseminating the keys. So when our teachers get back and our employees get back, we're going to have to be handing out new keys for them. But you know, that was a big piece that really needed to happen, and it couldn't have happened at a better time for us, that the gentleman was available to come in and do that. So wrapping up the building project, I think, Bill, and feel free to jump in here if you have anything you want to add, but we've been working with our architects and Watchdog. I'd say we're probably 97% there at this point, which is really good. We have some things that, you know, maybe we were 90% happy with, and maybe 10%, you know, a little unhappy with, but we're rectifying those things. And out of such of a big building project, I think that's a pretty good accomplishment, specifically, you know, with this kind of stuff going on. Some schools have had their building projects shut right down, you know, so, you know, that's something to think about. We did, just so you know, receive all of our track and field equipment, the big mats and all those types of things. That was a challenge. That took us about a year. Well, it was a year of my time, so I know that other people had some time in it as well. Mark can probably attest to that. But we finally received everything, and we're good to go on that should we have a track season next year. Because remember, it's 2 years we were hoping to have that track up and running. So we're working through that. With that being said, I asked the building principals and supervisors to just prepare a quick, you know, like little 2-minute update on what's going on in their areas. So Mr. Van Orman, you are unmuted, so why don't you go first?
Yeah, certainly. So not to reiterate a lot of what Mr. Corey just said, but you know, from our administrative end, we're doing a lot of meetings to kind of keep business going. So working with teachers on planning and organizing office hours and educational plans, problem solving, troubleshooting with internet access and other situations with students and staff. We're also working on Honor Society and Junior Honor Society, trying to move, you know, gather information on that. We've had conversations about what those things might look like. Same thing with some fundraising things that were going on. Same thing with the trips that were scheduled, 8th grade and senior class. You know, nothing definitive yet because, you know, the guidance from the state continues to change. So we kind of spend a lot of time planning, and then we have to replan some of those things. We're also looking at scheduling for next year, trying to put programs in place at the middle and the high school level. The last 2 days, Raina and myself have been meeting one-on-one with teachers and the guidance staff to develop like recovery plans for students that may be kind of below that 65 threshold, and trying to figure out what we can do to, just like we would do if we were in school, like working on trying to get them caught up. We're just doing it now digitally, electronically, you know, over email and sharing documents. So, you know, today 7 of those teacher meetings, 2 more department meetings, same thing yesterday, same thing tomorrow, just trying to stay in contact and support the teachers with all the challenges that they are facing right now.
Great.
Thank you. Let's see, Dennis.
Yeah. So, you know, very similar as Matt was, you know, sharing, we are working really hard. Our teachers are working so hard with our kids every day. We have instructional materials going out. We've got additional ones going out next week or the following week again. But our teachers are sending things and calling kids and checking with kids and families on a daily basis. I'm asking them to contact families at least 3 times, contact their kids at least 3 times every week. And I will tell you, it has been thousands of check-ins with kids. Phone calls, text messages, class dojo, reading stories, Facebook messages, just absolutely incredible, what they're doing for our kids and making sure our kids are staying connected. And we're checking on the social, emotional well-being of our students. Those teachers, we have a weekly schedule that we meet together, all the grade levels and departments. We meet every single week, and we are going over, some of the changing things that happens. But it's just incredible. We have an incredible staff that are really caring about our kids, and that's just shows that culture that we already have built, and it's just fantastic to see it come to action right now.
Great, thanks, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Hinman.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off of what Matt said. We've been doing a lot of meetings trying to really support the teachers and the students. We've had some great phone calls. Some of the teachers have struggled with reaching some of the kids. So we've directed, Matt and I have that, forwarded our way, we'll try to reach out. So have had some great conversations with families and trying to break down those barriers that might be getting in the way of the online learning that we're taking on and all the challenges that we have. So far, we've been quite successful with that. Made some really great connections with families. The clerical staff and the teachers should really be commended. When we went into this crisis, within a day, they were able to pull things together and really come together for kids. So that clerical staff and those copy machines worked so hard. And the staff that is coming in to hand out work to kids and to collect work, and the teachers for being able to put together so many great resources for these kids on the fly when we had this plan in place and all of a sudden it was yanked out and we're like, guess what, you're handing it to us and this is what we're going to do. The clerical staff just did a phenomenal job of supporting our kids and doing what we asked them to do, so kudos to them. The other thing I did want to mention is that Mr. Corey touched on this a little bit. Mr. Van Orman and Mr. Taylor and I have been spending a lot of time together, and we've been working really, really hard to present a very united message so our families don't get confused. We're trying to make things simple because we know how challenging the situation can be. So I believe that collaboration has really been positive for what the message we're trying to send and the support that we can provide for our students and our faculty. So I know Mr. Van Orman and Mr. Taylor and I have been working pretty hard together, and I appreciate the two of them. They've really been doing a great job for us all to connect together. So.
Good. Julia?
The special ed department has been working hard, just like Dennis and Matt and Raina just got done saying. The teachers are trying very hard, the special ed teachers are trying hard to make sure that students are getting their accommodations, their services, they're modifying curriculum as to the best of their ability. So we're trying to come close to the IEP, and that's become challenging, but I think they're doing a great job. I'm real proud of our gen ed staff that have really stepped up to the plate for students with disabilities as well. They're on the front line, and they've been making automatically some of these accommodations and modifications to their own curriculum. And then they collaborate with the special ed teachers and come up with a decent plan for these kids during the time period. With students with disabilities, all students in UPK K1 regress a little, but now we're going to be we're planning on difficult, when we come back, if we come back in May, we come back in September, whatever it is, how do we look at determining summer services for students who regressed, and what does that look like? We're making plans for kids we haven't seen with these draft IEPs, and that's going to be a challenge. I anticipate some more meetings in September and October, how we meet, get our finger on exactly where these kids stand is going to be a challenge. But all in all, I think the special ed department's been doing very well. I think we're doing a great job under this circumstance. So yeah.
Great. Mr. Blankenberg?
Fortunately, athletics has been on a hold. A lot of our coaches and students are really missing those opportunities. We were really looking forward to getting unified basketball up and running and had all those plans in place. And fortunately, that season's been on hold. Our track athletes and coaches are really disappointed. We wanted to open our track up and show the community what a great facility that we had put in as part of our building project. We're on hold right now. Hopefully we can get back and get some things started. I will tell you that there's 11 sections in New York State, and 2 of the 11 sections have already canceled their spring season. Technically, right now we're about halfway through our spring season, so
Excuse me.
we'll see what happens with that when we come back. We have a lot of community center members that are missing their workouts and struggling with that, and the weather is, at least the sun's been out, but it's been chilly to get outside and do some things. And 21st century, what is that going to look like, summer wise for programming and those types of things. So unfortunately, a lot of things on hold, but trying to plan for the future with what we know.
The other piece, Mark, thank you. The other piece that Mark has been working on is a collaborative summer school between North Rose, Wolcott, and Red Creek at this point. So he is working through details on that. Right now, obviously, summer could be very interesting, not knowing what direction we're going to be in. It could be completely online. It could be maybe in person. So we're hoping for the best and hoping to have kids in front of us. But we are working through the process for a collaboration, at least in middle school and high school at this point. Is that correct, Mark?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Cindy, and then we have Bill, and I don't think I forgot anyone. So Cindy?
I've taken on a real support role here. I want to really commend the principal's work and special ed and everything they're doing directly with the teachers and the staff. I think they're spending their life on Zoom, that's for certain. Lots of professional development opportunities right now for teachers and staff. And I push that out to them through a Google Classroom. There's everything you can imagine, nuts and bolts on how to communicate video-wise with students, how to make telephone calls to students maybe without having your personal number identified, as well as some things that specifically for science, social studies, English, math, and social emotional support for students. So there's a lot out there. A lot of curriculum companies have opened up their resources for free, which gives us an opportunity to explore some things also. And the other thing I've been working on with the community schools organization, they have some new grant funding that they've received. And I've been working with that group to identify resources of where to get supplies from and how we're going to push it out to our families. And that'll be up and coming within the next 2 to 3 weeks here. It looks like that should really come together. I've been meeting with our local RIC group, the local professional development people in the same job, has me a few times a week to talk about curriculum, thinking forward here when we come back. Our curriculum is going to have to look a little differently than it would normally look in September, and how to start planning for that. Still have our letters training out there and organizing with them and seeing what will happen with that over the summer. Peaceful Schools has provided our staff and opened up to us a lot of virtual circles so that we can really support our staff too, has the opportunity to support and kind of visit with the group for their social emotional needs. So.
Great, thank you. Bill?
I'd like to say when this first started, Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, we are currently we're contracting our treasurer, our interim treasurer through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. They did a dry run a couple of weeks before the shutdown to see how they were going to be able to work with us and how they were going to be able to meet our needs by working at home, and it worked out well. We were not anticipating, I don't think, as quick of a shutdown. And we were able to get in the building the following week, and we were able to put together a plan for providing payroll for the district going forward. And I just like to say that it's been working great. Both Julie and Phyllis have been doing a great job working together. You saw this warrant that you've got here. This is the first warrant that we've actually done remotely. So they were able to get the invoices together, get the warrant put together, have the checks printed, and then sent out to all of our vendors. So our bills are being paid. Our employees are being paid. And this is something that that I don't think the business office has done an outstanding job working together to get this done. I can't say enough about Julie, Phyllis, and Missy right now. I'm also on the phone with them. I'm emailing them all the time. Sometimes I think that they want me to go to bed at midnight. But it seems to be nonstop. And we're all working together, and they're getting it done.
Good, thanks, Bill. Is there anyone, any board members that have questions for any of the administrative team?
I want to say a point. I appreciate their reports. Those are so helpful that they provide for us, and certainly in these trying times as they are, it's good to know from them. They're right there on the line what's happening. Particularly right now, Cindy, I'm looking at your report about your superintendent's day back in March, and it's just great to see a report with all that kind of data, the outline of what was provided and what was on the scope to be provided right along. It's just that's nice to know and see what's happening. So thank you, and thank you to all of you. But I just happen to have that in front of me at this point.
And Brad, you bring up a great point about that superintendent conference day. That superintendent conference day was right at the time that the shutdowns were starting to happen. In fact, that was a Friday, and I think the conversations were happening on a Monday. So the importance of that is our faculty. So when I went in, I did a very brief, I don't even know how long it was, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. Little kickoff about COVID-19 and moving forward and all that stuff. And then basically we said, but we have work to do today, and it doesn't have anything to do with COVID-19. And our faculty stepped up a couple notches and didn't get distracted with that, and went right along with what we needed to do with those trainings. So I couldn't be more proud of a faculty for doing that. So that really goes out to our teachers for taking that seriously and saying, yeah, this is still important work, even though the world around us is kind of blowing up. We need to focus and move forward on this. And then a couple days later, we had a little different approach to life. But overall, they did a great job with that. So I have to give them a lot of credit. It was nice to see the results of that survey that you mentioned, Brad. Because I think
the scope of that is
large,
very
they
good.
were very positive.
Yes.
So, any other board members?
I just want to say a thank you to you, Mr. Corey, and your whole team. And, although I'm talking to you almost daily for the last 5 or 6 weeks, it seems like, it's very good to see and to hear from the rest of you and to hear such detail that they're working on. And thank you that you're still taking care of our kids. It means the world to me. Thank you, and hopefully, I'm sure we'll get through this. We're probably gonna have another meeting like this soon. So I think we got one in 2 weeks from now. So
absolutely.
I would expect our next meeting to be pretty similar to this, and it'll be good to see you all again and hear, what's changed in the next 2 weeks. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart, really.
Thank you.
Brad, I just had to do the same thing and turn my light on so that I could see what I was doing.
Getting dark here.
It's getting dark. The other piece, the community members that I see on the right-hand side, some of you I can see names, and some of you I can only see that you're on an iPhone, or it could say something like, somebody's name, but I'm not quite sure who that is. But I do see Jen DeVinny. And I do want to say, Jen, I received your email this evening, and I will be passing that on to the Board of Education as well. I think, Kyle, you probably received that as well, I believe. So, you know, that is a nice email that really talks about the same things that we're talking about here. Really kind of supporting one of our teachers who's kind of gone above and beyond. And we'll certainly share that at another meeting, if that's okay, Kyle.
Absolutely.
But I do want to recognize that we did receive that, and I know we have everybody shut down on that side, but we did receive that email. And I don't know, I did receive a couple other emails tonight that are going to the Board of Education. I don't see any of the names on the right-hand side here of the people who sent me the emails. But if you are there, if you are iPhone, then you will have your email passed on to the board as well if you haven't already. Other than that, I do want to mention that we did have a gentleman that we will publicly recognize next time for donating a Chromebook to one of our students. I mentioned it earlier, but I just have a couple things I want to do before that, and we will have that for the next board meeting as well. So that's a really nice gesture on his part, and we really appreciate that he can help one of our students in need. That's all I have.
There's nothing else. Thank you all for coming. I do know, members of the board and Mr. Corey, we do have one or two personnel matters to discuss in executive session, as well as negotiations issue. So to the rest of you, we'll be returning from executive session and taking no action. All we'll be doing is adjourning after that. So we are going to close this Zoom meeting in a moment. And the rest of you who are invited to executive session, what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? How long? When is everyone ready to join the other meeting?
Why don't we, can I quickly, from board members, Larry, I think you need the link sent to you.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, is there anyone else who needs the link sent or would like the link sent?
Could you send it to my personal email or my business email?
Yes, if I have it. Can you text it to me, Brian?
I'll give you my business email.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Corey, I do see one in here right now. Did you send one at 7:30?
Yeah, that could be the invite. Yes.
Okay.
It's for 7:30. Well,
yep.
It was supposed to be for 7:30. And Brian, you need me to send it to you, correct?
If you don't mind.
Nope, not at all.
Okay, if I can get a motion and a second to move the board into executive session, we'll all meet back up in the other. All right, we got Mr. Smith and Mr. Curtis. Thank you. And to everybody else, we'll see you at the next one. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.